Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Firstly, I just want to say that I'm very humbled to have been asked to do this. There are amazing scholars here and amazing teachers, activists, organizers, and for me to have the privilege to be up here is extremely humbling and a little nerve-wracking, but I'll get this. So, as they said, I'm Lupe Carrasco. I just came in from LA on an airplane. I'm very happy to be here. And so I want to basically start with saying that what I'm about to present is not my work. It is the work of other chingones out there in this community, this aslan of ours, and including the art that you're going to see on this PowerPoint presentation. It is by a very good friend of mine, Veronica Valadez. I want to give them credit first off. So what I'm presenting is my interpretation and how I've used their work in my practice. And so I'm a student of it and I'm a facilitator of it as well. Okay? So I just want to make that clear. I don't want to try to take credit for other people's work. So let me start with Nepantla, just defining it very briefly, which is the theme of this ethnicity summit, right? And so according to Gloria Anzaldúa, it is the space between two worlds. It is a space where you are not this or that, but where you are changing, okay? And so that really speaks to what our presenters just said right now. We are here about change and transformation. It's painful and all sorts of other things. And so I'm going to go through that right now. But we are definitely here saying that we recognize the fact that we are living in this in-between space. So let me just start a little bit with some of the stuff that I've studied as a curriculum and instruction, quote-unquote, specialist. I like to focus more on the philosophy of curriculum studies, not so much the, how to do the teaching. And what we do see right now in the education world, departments of education, is they're getting away from curriculum studies. And they're doing more the teacher college model, right? Like how to, teach and get the kids to memorize and test and all of these types of things. Even though they say they're not, that's really at the end of the day what they're doing. They're not facilitating us as education students to really think about the purpose of education, the purpose of, what we're doing in this world, the fact that we are capable of creating change, facilitating change in our students. And that's very telling, right? So you're seeing these teacher college models. And so why is that? And so I want to look real quickly at the Latin, I guess you could say the root form of the word curriculum. It's kind of like correr, right? Like to run, the running of the course. So curriculum is really not supposed to be something that is set. It's supposed to be something that travels in a natural direction. And we're supposed to be facilitating that with our students, right? Not given a box for kids to be tested on. And so I also want to kind of recognize the fact that we have a thing called inside curriculum. And so those of us who are teachers, that's what we deal with, the stuff that's inside the classroom, right? That's very formal curriculum. And then there's also outside curriculum. And the outside curriculum is what our students, our children, what we kind of get the most, right? It's all the things that are formal and informal. So it can be, billboards, magazines, conversations with our peers, conversations with our families, and it can also be a little bit more formal, like churches, right? The Boys and Girls Club, the YMCA, all the other types of institutions that we participate in, universities, university organizations, right? Things that we participate in the outside classroom space. And then we also have a thing that we really don't talk about, which is the hidden curriculum. Okay, I'm not going to go through all the different things that define hidden curriculum. I'll just kind of go over it really quickly. So some of the hidden curriculum are the things that we teach without formally saying we're teaching this, right? So like when you have a prom king and queen, you're teaching, straight, right? You're teaching that couples are supposed to be man and woman. So we may not explicitly say that, but that's part of the hidden curriculum. When we say, raise your hand, or I'm sending you to the office, we're teaching power structures, right? We're teaching consequences. We're teaching that students can't really think for themselves. There's all these different things that we teach in the hidden curriculum. And a lot of that goes, a lot of that also comes into play with things like kids are coming to the classrooms with that we never talk about, right? So in the hidden curriculum, what we're teaching is that those things aren't important. Like the fact that, some kids are afraid right now because either they're undocumented or their parents or their partners, somebody in their family is undocumented. If we don't talk about that fear, we're teaching that it's not important, it has nothing to do with school. And that's true for the classroom space and other spaces as well, right? When we don't talk about our kids who are identified as LGBTQ, and we don't talk about those things in our spaces, we're teaching that those things aren't important. So all of that is part of the hidden curriculum. And so one of the things that I work on, and I'm an English and social studies teacher, so I've taught everything from journalism, yearbook, all the different levels of English and social studies, ethnic studies, Chicano studies, speech, all of these different ways that I've been in the classroom, this can apply to, but this can also apply to other core subjects or other subjects. And this is ways to tell counter stories, right? And so this is important because there's a story that has been created for us, and we need to have a very clear way to untell that story. And I actually have a very good friend, Dr. Roberto Rodriguez, and I really love how he one time really corrected me. He said, our narratives are not the counter narratives. Ours are the narratives. Their stories, what they're building for us and our children, those are the counter narratives. And we need to get back to our narratives. And so when he cleared that up for me, it makes me think every time I use that word counter narrative. So basically we're countering what the hegemonic forces are building for us and our children. And so I'm going to go ahead and just really quickly talk to you about this trenza methodology. Essentially what this is stating is that we can take stories, it's a different way of storytelling, where we are able to tap into things that are relevant and real to us, but at the same time also use things that are like research-based, use facts and statistics to tell your story. I personally have done this with my students. For instance, I had a student who was extremely hurt by the fact that her father, who had come from Mexico, he had gotten his papers and was very, very proud of the fact that he got a FedEx job. That for their family was huge because it meant stability, it was a sense of pride. The whole family was so happy for their father. One day he goes to a home to deliver a package, and the woman says that she will not accept it for him because she needs somebody who can speak English. And this is because he had a very thick accent. And when my student was sharing this with me before she wrote it, she was very hurt that her father was treated in this way. And so when she wrote out her narrative, I had her also research things having to do with, like language acquisition and labor, like labor rights and so on and so forth. So she used the trenza methodology, right? A trenza is a braid, right? So it's like you're weaving your story in with academics also. So it's a very beautiful storytelling way. And so I have here a picture of myself at 15 years old. Okay, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about myself, but then I'm gonna get back to why I'm doing that. It's not just so that I have you know about me. I just have to have the stage right now. So when I look at this picture, I was 15. My brother took that picture. He was in high school. He was like a freshman. And he actually developed that in the lab. So when I see this picture, the August, Raiders sweatshirt, right? Like, a little bit on the gangster side, like I was, right? But I see a lot more too. I see a lot of pain, a lot of, identity crisis, a lot of confusion, right? I was raised by a mom and a father who both were migrant farm workers as little kids. They both struggled, through elementary. They both have their stories of discrimination. They both heard from the things that they saw their parents and their uncles and aunts go through, but they both reacted to it very differently. My father said, I will never work for a white man again. I will never work for a white man again. And my father ended up becoming an organizer activist, mainly in the areas of relationship-based, being a Mexican woman. And so that kind of inspired my father to do the work he did. And so something that my father instilled in me is, you're not going to be a sellout. You're a Chicana. You're gonna be down for your people, right? And my mother, who also experienced racism, and my mom is the darker one. My dad's the güerito, right? My mom is the darker one. She experienced it even more fiercely than my dad, right? And so her thing was, I'm gonna do whatever it takes to get out of this, right? To go into the mainstream and give a better life to my children. And I'm very grateful to her for that. But it caused a lot of confusion, right? Where if I followed my mom's path, that was going to put me in a position of selling out. If I go my dad's route, that means I'm going to be around my people. And the sad thing is in my community where I grew up, which was Oxnard, our people, we had a high teenage pregnancy rate. A lot of gang activity. This is the 90s. All my friends, all the boys were associated with gang membership, right? My cousins, all of them were. I was actually the oldest of my cousins to get pregnant, and I was 18 when I had my first son. He is now 22 years old. Joseph, I love him. Okay, I love him a lot. Okay, so these are things that were causing trauma, right? We are in the state of trauma. I was causing trauma to myself because I was, on the one hand, like very motivated to do for my community and my family, but on the other hand, I was making it very difficult for myself being a young mother. And so, and then of course, like with the young man who was my son's father, was coming from the same type of sort of traumatized communities, where his father was a heroin addict. And he eventually went on to become a heroin addict, and I think he's in prison right now. And he has not been a part of my son's life. And so then that cycle, right, is continued where my son was raised without a father. And I'm very, very lucky that he's gone through that in a healthy way. And that healthy way has been through ceremonies, right? Indigenous ways of spirituality, which is very tied to the Pantera pedagogy. Okay, and so I can go on and on and on and on about this, but I just wanted to give you a little background. So I'm an 18-year-old young mother, and I finally decided I cannot be like all of my friends. And honestly, like there was, just some of them went on to have, many children, really bad relationships, unhealthy lifestyles. Some of them, even the mujeres, went on to prison. I could not do that, so I ended up, starting community college, Oxnard Community College, and then eventually transferred to UCLA. And Ruben read out all of the different, things that I've participated in my academic life. So that's a little background about myself. And so now we're going to get back to the Patlera pedagogy. So let me put this up. So it's a pedagogical pathway with an emphasis on social justice, human dignity, and it brings together some of the chingones that I was talking about earlier, right? Like Paulo Freire, Gloria Anzaldúa, Mikhail Bakhtin, and these concepts frame the Patlera pedagogical pathway through practice, identity, formation, border epistemologies, language diversity, dialogue, and critical education. So the Patlera is really a composite. You could say it's kind of like a trenza also, where it's weaving all of these things together. And then I also want to note as well that other pedagogies that are worthy of study, and even my own self, I'm going to research even further beyond what I already understand about them, are like radio pedagogy, Naui pedagogy, the Shinachli curriculum. These are all other very powerful ways of really framing education inside and outside, right? Inside curriculum and outside curriculum, and honestly, even within your own households. So I'm not going to read this whole slide. If anybody wants these slides, I can have someone email them out to you. But I'm just going to kind of focus on some of the main points that I was trying to make here. So according to Paulo Freire, critical reflection on past action is vital for the continuous struggle. And that's kind of why I went a little bit into my story, because my story isn't just about me and what I've gone through, it's about what a lot of us have gone through, right? When I'm telling my story, especially when I share with my students, which as I've gotten older, I've been a little bit more brave about doing, what we see is that they're like, yeah, that's my deal, that's my this, that's my that, right? It may not be an exact story, but a lot of us, I would say, have that in our families. We have, like for instance, every time I say the statistic about Black and brown young men more likely to go to prison than to college, my students, most of them can name, whoever in their family has gone to prison, but like college, I'm going to be the first one, right? And so also let me go on. So the continuous struggle to reveal reality in order to, as they were saying earlier, to modify our world. That is why I share my story, and it's a model for what we can facilitate in our classrooms, what we can facilitate in our circles, our women's circles, our men's circles, things that have to do with like real trauma. So real trauma are the things I mentioned earlier, like things having to do with immigration. Right now, like the ban. Some of our students may have family members who got stuck in other countries during the ban or the bans that are coming. Many people are fearing these walls. Right? The fact that people who legitimately have permission to be here are being detained. The Salvadoran woman who was about to receive emergency surgery and was removed from the hospital, mother of 2 children. All of these things are traumatic. People are not going to be seeking health care. They're not going to be seeking help when there's domestic violence issues. Right? We're going to be pushing people into the shadows even more than ever before, and those things are traumatic, and we need to have a way to talk about them. Honestly, I'm just going to say it right now, that we don't talk about things that are really traumatizing our communities, like child molestation. Right? I just did a police report. I had a student. She wrote her autobiographical essay, and she shared for the first time when that happened to her. And I obviously am a mandated reporter. And it's the right thing to do. I had to do a police report. And at first, I could tell she was a little upset, but now there's a bond between the two of us, right? When I explained to her that I had to do what I did. And so, and then other things too, like drug addictions in our families. Like I have plenty of students whose parents have lost them due to drug addiction. And so we really need to talk about like the human element and why is it that these folks are relying on drugs as a form of self-care instead of things that are actually like long-term sustaining healthcare processes. Okay. Furthermore, another thing that Pablo says is that the things that we do are political. We need to incorporate the political into what we do. And that speaks to what Ruben was saying earlier, that it's not just enough for me to get the students all riled up about, whatever's going on politically right now in the country, about the build that wall and all that, bullshit, right? But we have to give them an outlet for what to do with that anger, that pain, all those emotions that they're feeling, right? And so it's very important that we think about organizing outside of our classrooms so that students have an outlet for those things, okay? It's also part of the pedagogy, and it deals with taking what we're doing formally inside and helping connect that to the outside curriculum as well. So I touched on Pablo Freire a little bit, and that's part of one of the parts of the weaving of the Prensa methodology of Nepantera. And I'm also going to touch on Gloria Anzaldua's 7 stages of conocimiento, right? So those 7 stages are el arrebato, Nepanta, the cuatricua state, the call or el compromiso, putting Koyoshaki together, the blow-up of clashing realities, and shifting realities. So the first one, el arrebato. This is when, I don't know, for some of us it may have been like in college, or it could have been, however it was that we got lucky, that we were ripped from our familiar home, right? Like I've heard people refer to like the matrix, like the 2 pills, right? when you were given that choice, like, to really want to know what's up, right? Sometimes that's college, sometimes you're lucky you get that in high school, sometimes you're lucky you've got a family member that helps you open your eyes, right? And this is when you're like, wow, this shit is messed up, right? This world is not right. This doesn't make any sense, right? This is what I could call an existential awakening, right? Like, what the heck's going on? And then the second one is nepanta. And so I kind of defined that earlier. So that's that in-between state. That's when you're living like for the Catholics of the world, like purgatory, right? Where you're not here, you're not there, you're like stuck in between. That's nepanta. And so this is when you start to transform, but you're struggling with it. Okay? You're struggling. You're not like fully, like your eyes are open, you're right there in the middle, right? And if you don't take a side and say, you know what, it's cool, I'm gonna stick it with the hegemonic forces, or like I'm gonna do something about this. If you don't take sides, you're stuck in the banda. And sometimes that is when you form a new identity, like a hybrid form. When I was preparing this, the first thing that came to my mind when I was thinking about this is, right now, Zootsu is doing their 40th revival in LA at the Martin Forum, and it makes me think immediately of the Pachuco, or the Pachuca, right? That's like a hybrid form. It's like you're neither here nor there, right? Your parents are disrespected and humiliated, even though they're beautiful and wonderful and hardworking, and you're not American either, and Americans are very clear that they want to build that wall, etc., etc. And so you form something else that brings you a sense of pride, right? And in the case of Zootsu, that was the formation of the Pachuca, or the Pachuca, right? And so, and that's beautiful. It's very beautiful. But to be Pachuco or Pachuca isn't who you are. It's what you've created, right? It's what you've created to protect yourself. So you still need to move on. You need to move on to something that's healthier. And so that takes you to the third stage, which is the Cuatlicue state. Okay? And this is where you confront the evils that have colonized your mind, right? The inside curriculum, the formal curriculum, right? Of not just schools, but lots of different institutions that we're faced with. Those things have messed us up, right? Because if you have sex before marriage, you're going to hell, right? All of these types of things that are fed into our minds. And so this is when we start to confront those things. You try to get rid of that part of yourself that decayed you when you used to accept those things, like being marginalized as your destiny. And so I don't like to read from my slides, but the quote up here is so dope that I want to. Or is there somebody that can read it for me? Is there anybody who you don't have microphones? Okay. Then you have to scream. Okay, so letting go of this is not easy and it hurts. Ansaldúa in 2002 describes this paradox as the knowledge that exposes your fears can also remove them. Seeing through these cracks makes you uncomfortable because it reveals aspects of yourself, your shadow beasts, you don't want to own. Admitting your darker aspects allows you to break out of your self-imposed prison. Okay, so you might think of folks that are stuck, right? And they can't let go. They're just stuck on this is the way it's supposed to be, right? And when they get through this, it's very painful. And then the next stage is the call or el compromiso. This is when you realize that nothing is fixed and that everything can be rewired. Everything can be transformed. Everything can be transformed, right? There's nothing more annoying to me than hearing somebody say, oh, that's just the way it is. What are you doing? You're just wasting your time. That's just the way it is. I'm like, you're such a bobblehead, man. Like, you're just like, yeah, that's the way it is. And it really is illogical to think that that's just the way it is, right? Everything is created by us. It can be dismantled by us. It can be recreated by us. And here in this stage, this is when you seek community. Community, right? Right now, you are all around community. There are many ways that we seek it, and this is for us. I call it the Chicano con, right? We're all nerdy here. We're like all happy with our people, right? Like-minded people. And so it feels great to have colegas colegas que comparten la misión, like right now. And then I put in my notes to read the quote once again, so I'm going to go and read that. So, Anzaldúa in 2002 explains that in this stage, your passion motivates you to discover resources within yourself and in the world. It prompts you to take responsibility for consciously creating your life and becoming a fully functioning human being, a contributing member of all your communities, one worthy of self-respect and love. Okay, I was going to wear my Shelby t-shirt, but I changed my mind last minute. So this is the 5th stage. And so I'll just give you a little background. Goyoshalki was killed by her brother Huitzilopochtli. When he left his mother's womb, Huatlique was their mother, okay? And the reason why he killed Goyoshalki, according to the legend, was because she had been attacking Huatlique during her pregnancy because it was like a miraculous pregnancy, kind of like an immaculate conception kind of thing. And so they were thinking that the mother Huatlique had dishonored them. And so Huitzilopochtli is the warrior, right? Upon exiting her womb, he dismembered her. He took her apart and he threw her head to the moon. It became the moon, right? So that Huatlique could always have her daughter. And so essentially when you think of Goyoshalki, you think of something that is dismembered, taken apart. And so going through all of these stages of Nebanta, that's what we're doing, right? We're taking ourselves apart, which obviously is painful, right? And so, but the beautiful thing is it allows us to remember ourselves, right? Remember as in like the storytelling, right? As in going into the past, but also to remember ourselves, right? To bring ourselves together and become whole again. And so this is how we can create these new narratives. Or as Dr. Stinky would say, they're not new narratives. They're narratives that have always been there, but we haven't been allowed to share them. We've been forced to create these narratives that are part of the hegemonic narrative. And so learners begin to position ethnic ideologies, mythologies, philosophies, culture in order to create a new narrative that re-envisions that world. And so for me, I'm very happy about the fact that a lot of our scholars are really looking to things that are ancient wisdom that's always been in our cultures, ancient, indigenous epistemologies. They're so intelligent, simple, and profound. But this modern life, this capitalistic life, this you are what you own life, has taken us away from that, right? And so I find it very beautiful that we're able to look towards what our ancestors have developed and use that to remember ourselves, right? Because if we're going through these traumas, like heroin addiction, right? Like all of the things, like losing somebody to ICE, losing somebody to the prison industrial complex, those things are traumatic. And we are resilient and we deal with it, but we need to be resilient, as you said earlier, in such a way that we move beyond that. And so, I think I have very little time, so I'm going to rush through this. The 6th stage is the blow-up or the clash of realities. This is where we have to present innovative ideas, where we attempt to change others' perspectives. This is where our paradigms start to shift. This is, in this clash of realities, people are going to reject you. They're going to reject your ideas, okay? And I'm sure if we all, get together and we talk about it, we all have stories about how this has happened to us. I can tell you right now, for me, it happened in 2 very distinct times in my life. When, as a teacher, I had to battle 2 principals/districts. One actually San Fernando High School, LA Unified School District, and another time in the Central Valley, Fresno, okay? Where I was teaching when September 11th happened, Okay, and so the way that I was helping students to understand it, critical thinking, which they say they want us to have students do, was not appropriate for them. They did not like the way I was doing it, and I wasn't tenured, so I ended up having to battle it out. Another time was when the walkouts happened. I was teaching in Fresno when the walkouts happened, and I kind of laughed about the fact that they thought I would be capable of organizing such a huge walkout throughout the state, and I didn't. All I did was say that students know. They feel when things are wrong. They may not be able to articulate it, and that's always what they capture in the news, right? But they definitely know something is wrong. They know that they want to be in solidarity with their people, and they walked out, okay? So when that happened, they couldn't fire me because I was tenured, but they definitely made my life very uncomfortable. And so that right there, that clash of realities is something that you may have to go through, and we have to talk about how we're going to deal with that, especially right now when we've got this ding-dong that's going to be in charge of public education in the national level, right? How are we going to ensure that our academic freedoms are not infringed upon? We need to talk about how we're going to be resilient and powerful and prevent them from doing these illogical things to us and our children. Okay, 7th stage, shifting realities. This is the critical turning point of transformation. The shifting of realities that allows us to develop ethical, compassionate strategies to allow us to negotiate conflict and difference within ourselves and between others. Okay? We must do this so we can find common ground, so we can form holistic alliances that enact spiritual activism. Right now, this makes me really think about the fact that we are going to have to be very organized and come together in order to protect our people. Right? When they convert our people, to their homes like they did, all over the state, all over the country, right? We need to be very organized. And so we need to ensure that within our organizations that we have clear plans for what we're going to do when they come to our communities. But we also need to make sure that we are working well with other organizations. And unfortunately, I don't see that happen too much. I see a lot of little squabbles about little, details that are not important. What's important is when they come to our school, or they come to our clinic, or they come to our hospital, they come to our communities, and they're trying to take our people. That's what matters, right? And so we need to get rid of these petty conflicts, and we need to be organized, we need to come together, right? So we need to remember ourselves and be so, dealing with the things that make us settled, so much so that we can collaborate with others very well, so that we can prevent these things from happening. Okay, so I had a lot more notes, but we'll go ahead and just, I'm running out of time here. Okay, so the final stage of Nepantla, or Nepantlera pedagogy, is, actually, it was the shifting realities. Okay, so I'm a little off here, but it's okay. So let me just go ahead and say one thing that's really important. The process of becoming a Nepantlera means that we are boundary crossers, right? So Gloria Anzaldúa, she talks about is it in this slide? Yes, okay. So if you look at the word nosotras with a slash in between versus nosotras without it, right? She says that the slash in between is the bridge, right? And that we can use that bridge to bridge us and the other. Well, she talks about dismantling that bridge, and so that we become true boundary crossers that recognize one another as we, not as us and they. Like we, in this struggle, in this movement, we need to feel like we are together. We are not against each other. And in that way, we become boundary crossers, thresholders, who initiate others in that rite of passage as well. So we are haciendo un mundo nuevo. We're making a new world. We are actually transforming. So I have a minute. Are there any questions or comments so far about Nepantlera? Okay, so basically I think for me, the main thing that I really want to get across is that it's really about South in order for us to be better for our world, right? So that in our world, we can be so strong that we can function as people who are resilient and are going to make change, that is sustaining and that is going to benefit all of us. Thank you.